Hello everyone, I'm Christopher Tienken, professor at Seton Hall University in the Department of Education Leadership, Management, and Policy. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the current school reform landscape. I think perhaps the most pressing issues today revolve around standardization and centralization of public education in the U.S. A lot of people ask, how did we come to this point where we have products like the Common Core and national standardized testing? Well, I think we've actually been marching toward this point since the launch of Sputnik. Since 1958, there's been multiple policy proposals and practices put forth on public schools to centralize and standardize the curriculum and assessment practices used with children. Regardless of the decade, the policy proposals have all been the same. Standardize, centralize, more testing, required curriculum, one-size-fits-all instructional policies. One of the most common reasons given by policymakers for the need to standardize education is this idea of global competitiveness, economic competitiveness. There seems to be some kind of a fear in the mind of policymakers and some business elites that America is losing its competitive edge. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The United States has ranked at the top of the Global Competitiveness Index more than any other nation in the world during the past 15 years. We're in the top 5 of the world in global creativity, global innovation, and global entrepreneurship. In 2012, we had over 122,000 innovation patents. The rest of the world only had 132,000. We have the highest number of Nobel Prize laureates in the world in the sciences. No other country comes close to us. In terms of our overall economic and scientific output, we are the world leader. So I'm not really clear why policymakers are afraid that we're losing our economic edge. But those aren't the figures and rankings that policymakers most often talk about. They most often cite our rankings on international tests. For example, the 2012 PISA mathematics test, the U.S. ranked 32nd in the world. But is that ranking real? I don't think so. There's many issues associated with international test ranks. I think the most important one is we're not comparing apples to apples. For example, you may have heard that China ranked #1 in the world in math. But China didn't take the test. Shanghai took the test. Shanghai isn't representative of the Chinese sample. For example, most 15-year-olds in China don't even graduate high school. They're not in high school during the PISA test. Shanghai is an anomaly because it represents a much more wealthy population, a much more professional population. So it isn't China per se. Many parents in Shanghai actually pay high school principals to get their students into the best schools. So in effect, what's happening in Shanghai is there's a creation of super schools. Those are most commonly the schools that take the PISA test. In those schools, you won't find students with special needs. You won't find migrant students. What you will find are children of the most professional people in Shanghai. Other countries simply don't test representative samples of their public school children. For example, in Singapore, students with special needs are not even in the public school system most commonly, so they're not taking the test. In other countries like Switzerland, second language learners are not tested. So the samples that are being compared here are not apples to apples. Another sample that we really have to look at is the sample of poverty. In the 22 OECD nations that outrank the U.S. on the PISA, the average poverty rate was 10.5%. The poverty rate in the U.S. is 23%. At the end of the day, international tests are measuring 19th century skills. These are skills that are easily replicated and easily outsourced. Our education policy should be focusing on skills like creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, because those are the skills that the largest economies in the world run on. So the skills that we currently seem obsessed with in the United States are not the skills that are going to propel our students forward in a global economy. We need to focus more on skills like resilience, persistence, empathy, collaboration, communication, compassion, critical problem solving, strategizing. Those are skills that transcend time. They transcend subject matter. But those are the skills that are necessary in a 21st century economy. So I think we really need to step back and take a look at what we're doing to children. Are we really giving them an education to prepare them for the future? Or are we training them to become someone's employee? I think there's a difference there. And if you look back at the Jeffersonian view of education, It was really a more well-rounded view, creating a complete human, developing the whole person, not just an economic implement for a CEO. I think it's important to remember that the public schools are the incubator of democracy. Therefore, parents, educators, community stakeholders should be advocating for curriculum and assessment policies that are divergent in nature, that allow kids to examine issues that are faced by our society, to work through long-term problems in ways that develop 21st century skills, so that they are truly prepared to go forth in the community, in the country, and globally to be successful.